There are many types of buildings in Tampa, Florida, but among the high-rises there's a fair representation of postmodern architecture, symbolic of cities around the world where postmodernism and post-secularism is starting to dominate. The challenge of urban mission, that and much more coming up next.
Just before he went up to heaven, Jesus gave us a command. He gave us a mission. Jesus said, "Go. Go unto all the world, telling them of His love." This is our mission. This is our global mission.
Hello, I'm Gary Krause and welcome to Global Mission Snapshots, coming to you today from Tampa, Florida in the United States. On today's program, we take you to various parts of the world. We'll take you to Port Charlotte, just south of here, where Compass Communities is making a difference, being the hands and feet of Jesus Christ as they feed and clothe people and show the love of Jesus. We'll also learn about Chinese characters, how the Chinese alphabet actually points to stories from the Bible, connecting God's holy word with the Chinese people. But first up, let's go to London, England, where Anna and Sam literally go to the streets of that city with something called the Sabbath Sofa.
No matter where you go, you find that people are tired. The stress of daily life can be overwhelming. We created the Sabbath Sofa to introduce to people the idea that they can rest each and every week. Our last two adventures took place at Marble Arch and Soho in London. Take a look and see how the Sabbath Sofa was received.
Shireen,
Hamida.
Hamida, and Munna. What do you do for a living?
I'm in the Royal Marines.
Are you tired?
Yes, I am.
I don't know, I've been walking for a really long time.
What time did you start work?
I started 3.
Commuting makes you tired.
The news make me a little bit tired, but more than tired of listening. But news tired that like people they say they are tired, but they should do something like rather than complaining. I don't know.
I've done a lot of walking.
Okay.
And walking tires me out a lot.
All right. Okay. You said you're tired mentally. Why are you tired mentally?
The things you see, the things you hear, the things you smell when you're out in Afghanistan, Iraq.
Oh, really? Have you been to
Yes.
Afghanistan? Wow. Okay, what about you? Anything else that gets you tired?
The evil in this world.
Wow.
Now I'm looking for a new job because I've got no more energy to do it.
Sometimes watching the news, you do get bored, and then it reaches a point where for me, I just don't watch the news sometimes.
Right. Imagine with me, imagine that you could take 24 hours out of your life every single week, let's just say from a Friday sunset to a Saturday sunset.
Okay.
And in that time, you could rest.
Amazing. That sounds incredible.
Yeah?
Sounds like a dream.
A dream?
Dream come true.
Really?
Yeah.
I do need a day like that.
And it sounds like my own small world.
You need a day where you can just not think of anything, just relax, and have a moment to like refresh yourself for the next day.
And it's a day that we just take time out to remember we were not designed to just keep going.
I think it's brilliant. Anytime you can give to anybody, and to either it's from your time or money or whatever, if you just do good, it's perfect.
I'd like to challenge you today that for this coming week, whatever you're doing, to take some quality time out for yourself and for your family to rest. I'm really grateful you come.
Me too, really.
To sit on the
Very
Sabbath
nice
sofa.
talk.
It's
Thank
really
you.
nice that you could just hear about the Sabbath for yourself. I hope you get an opportunity to discover
I hope
it for
so.
yourself.
I really hope so.
You can see that people are eager for the Sabbath without even knowing it. The Sabbath Sofa is just one of the many ways that you can witness to the people around you. How will you tell people about the good news of Jesus?
On this program, we talk a lot about church planting, and my guest is Pastor Anthony Wagner Smith, who is a church planter. Thanks for joining us, Anthony. You know, we talk about church planting. What is that exactly? How would you describe it?
Sure. Well, when people hear that someone is a church planter, like I am, they often ask you two questions. When does the church meet and where is the church? Right. So most people think of a church or a new church in terms of a program that meets once a week. And so as Adventists, you know, it meets once a week on the Sabbath, and they think of it in terms of a worship service. But really a church plant is where you plant the gospel before you start a worship service. So in my ministry, we do three things before we start worshiping on Sabbath with new churches. We do discipleship with our core team, really going through what the gospel is and how it changes our everyday life. We also do visioning and prayer, so that we have a vision for the plant and a DNA and a strategy. And then a third thing is community involvement. So I'm hanging out with my neighbors, bringing other people along so that it's not just teaching and talking, but it's believing and walking in our everyday life.
Right, so it's not all about inviting people to a building for a worship service. You're talking about, now, people will say, well, this is all very good in theory, but I don't have the time for community involvement. What do you say?
Yeah, if someone tells me they don't have the time, I would say you misunderstand the gospel. Because the gospel is not about clearing your schedule to do additional church stuff. It's about being intentional in the rhythms of life that you already live. So for example, here in Tampa, where we're shooting this video, there's some high rises and the hockey theater's right over here, the hockey stadium. And many people I work with enjoy hockey. And so they say, well, I don't have time, but they have time for hockey.
Right.
So I encourage them, invite your unchurched neighbor to the hockey game with you and invite them into the rhythm of your life, rather than feeling like you can no longer go to hockey as a Christian to make space to do quote-unquote church stuff.
Right, and so we have 3 meals a day, and so instead of eating it by ourselves, we invite someone to share the meal with us.
Exactly.
Now, Anthony, tell me a little bit about your church planting background. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I've pastored established churches and districts, and over the course of time, God really opened doors for me to work full-time as a pastor with developing new churches. And the first one that we planted is called Compass Communities, and we were there for 3-4 years, and I trained up two of our elders to really take the lead with that church. We started as 2 house churches that moved into a community center, and it's a multi-ethnic, multi-economic church that's just really making a dynamic impact in that community. And then after that, we moved to Tampa. We started a new church 1.5 years ago, and I also work as a coordinator with other pastors in the area, making plans, praying together, and then developing strategies to facilitate new churches.
So let me ask you a fundamental question. Why do we focus on starting new congregations rather than just filling up the ones we already have?
Sure. I mean, it's an issue, especially in Western contexts. But if a church hasn't grown for 20 years, if it continues doing the same thing, it's probably going to have the same result. Right. So if that church will intentionally plant, the kingdom is extended, and the Seventh-day Adventist Church has a greater impact. And the research shows it impacts the church that plants effectively, not every time, but the majority of times. So it's really, you have to give in order to receive. And if we have closed hands, the gospel says we're not going to grow, we're not going to receive.
Right. And when a leader says to me, well, we're going to fill up our existing churches first, I say, how's that been working for you? You know?
Right. Yeah.
So now tell me, how has this focus on community ministry touched some people's lives? Can you give me an example?
Sure, absolutely. There's so many, but for me, it's all about living a missional lifestyle. And so I can not only talk to other people about using their gifts, but I have to use mine. Right. And so one of the things that God's given me is a passion for exercise and sports. And so I actually teach a cycling class through a local gym where I live, and met a young man, got connected with him, connected with others in the church and the community. And that man had been through some pretty crazy stuff in his life, but as a result of forming friendships, getting involved with our discipleship and everything else, he eventually gave his heart to Christ and was baptized. Before he was baptized, he told me, I don't know how to swim. And I said, that's okay. You know, it's just going to be waist deep water. We had done it in a pool at someone's house. And when I baptized him, he went under the water and he came out of my grasp, swam to the deep end. Then he popped up and looked at me and said, fooled you.
Oh, no.
So there's a great party going on when people give their hearts to the Lord. There's another lady. We really emphasize belonging before believing. And so when it comes to the proclamation of the Bible, you have to be a committed Seventh-day Adventist and a member if you're going to be teaching, small groups, working with kids. But other ministries, people can get involved. And so we had a lady who's a professional lady. Our current church plant's in an affluent area, and she's a director of communication for a national company. She got involved with the church. She came to our orientation for new members and things we do. And I said, there's two ways to join the church, either baptism or profession of faith, which means you've already been baptized. And so she checked profession of faith, and I said, tell me about your baptism. She said, I don't remember it, I was 6 months old.
Oh, serious?
She was baptized as an infant. Oh. But she was so committed to our church and to the vision that she was all in on it. So she had to be studied with, and one of our leaders, we study with her and help her understand our doctrines and be committed to our message. Church planting is not about moving away from the message that we've been given as a Seventh-day Adventist church, but it illustrates how people get involved, they feel comfortable, they're connected, and then our doctrinal prophetic understanding is part of that growth and part of that experience.
So as we see increasing secularism, where we see people don't have a background in Christianity, this becomes increasingly important.
Absolutely, and another quick example of how it's important in a secular context, I want to show people, and I want them to change in their understanding of thinking of church as a worship service to thinking of service as worship.
Yes.
And so it's quite common that we cancel our worship service on Sabbath and then we go into the community to worship through service. Wonderful. And so we developed partnerships and practical service days in our area code that we live in, and that's a key way that we invite our neighbors to come with us and to serve alongside of us.
Fantastic. Anthony, thank you so much for sharing with us.
It was an honor, thank you.
And after this break, more stories, more mission. Welcome back to Tampa, Florida. Next up, we travel to Bangkok, Thailand, where Rick McEdward learns the fascinating way in which Chinese characters depict scenes from the Bible, providing connection points between Scripture and the Chinese people.
Thanks, Gary. Here with us today is Dr. Samuel Wong, good friend of mine and experienced missionary. And Dr. Wong, I hope you don't mind if I ask you a few questions.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Tell us, first of all, what is it that you're doing with your work and your sharing of the gospel today?
I'm right now working as a Chinese evangelist for this region in SSD and especially in SAUM.
Okay, so the SSD is the Southern Asia Pacific Division, and SAUM is the Southeast Asia Union. And these are areas that have large populations of Chinese people.
Yeah, outside of China and Taiwan, the largest Chinese population is in Thailand. Okay. And then you have the Chinese in Malaysia and Chinese in Singapore, as well as in Indonesia.
So there's large groups. When you speak to the Chinese people and you're doing some evangelistic outreach, what kind of approach do you use with them?
I normally would go from the Chinese culture, from the cultural gateway, to go from there to the Bible. Because Chinese are normally quite proud of their own culture, history, and traditions. And there we find a lot of similarities that we can still use to pave a way to the Bible truth.
Okay, so you have found some connections that are evident between, say, Chinese language and culture, history, and Bible truths?
Yes, today with the Bible we have is a written version. We have like 3,500 years, but the human history is much longer than that. So for the first 2,500 years, the revelation of God was not written, but we have Noah, we have Enoch, we have Adam. They all received revelation from God. That I believe must have been passed down through oral by word of mouth.
Okay, so these oral traditions, you have found that there's some very specific connections. Can you give a simple one? I don't know, maybe there's something about Noah or Enoch or something that could be simple for us to see that connection.
Probably the easiest one we can see is in the Chinese characters. The inventors of these characters may have known the stories in the Bible. For instance, the word for boat, you find a boat with 8 persons in it. And another word, let's say, about restrain and control yourself. It is a tree in the middle, and then there's a mouse there. And it seems to indicate that the only thing you need to restrain yourself is not use your mouse to touch anything from that tree.
So referring back to the Garden of Eden and the choice between taking, the mouth taking and not taking, right?
Right, and then another word is there's two mouths and two hands picking from that tree, and that's the word for to die.
And, oh wow, interesting. And of course the boat with the 8 would have maybe potentially refer to Noah and the 8 people on the ark.
That could be a way that the early inventors of the Chinese people wanted to keep the stories they know in the character writings to pass it down.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So when you share these kind of things, are people surprised?
They are, I think the feelings are mixed. They are first surprised, and then they feel very privileged. And there's so much information, not only in their writings, and they can also see, like in our other traditions, even in Confucius teachings, you can find almost all the major teachings, like love God and love people. And he prophesied about the holy man is going to come to rule the world with the principle of love. And those are very similar to the Bible teachings.
So in some ways there is an affirmation of cultural heritage at the same time teaching biblical truth.
Yes, so in order not to make the Chinese feel like Christianity is a foreign religion, we find the pieces and from here and there in the Chinese culture tradition. So it will be a natural way to lead them to the complete Word of God.
I want to just ask a personal question. I know your personal story. We only have just a very short time. How did God bring you from where you were up into the place now where you're kind of a world-known evangelist among the Chinese people?
Well, I don't think I'm well known, but I was born in a very humble farm and grown up in a communist China. The turning point for me was in to have the Tiananmen Square students movement. National students all have a part in this movement. But I didn't find the answer. Then I shifted to a spiritual movement, which is known as the Hare Krishna movement.
Which is sort of a branch of Hinduism.
It's a branch of Hinduism. It's very much contextualized to the Western version of it.
Okay.
And I become attracted to this movement, and actually was doing quite well in that movement. But when I started to try to preach to others, I run into Adventists, and I run into Spirit of Prophecy, and the book of great controversy just convert me.
Change your life.
Change my life, yeah.
Since you became a devoted Adventist Christian, you've been developing all kinds of resources. Over the last 2 years, you've added a couple more resources to help explain faith to others. Tell us about the Back to the Beginnings books that you've shared with.
That Back to the Beginnings is a new contextualized the Chinese resource for reaching the Chinese, and that is a project I started with the Center for East Asia Religions. It used to be the Buddhist Study Center, and I had a privilege to work with the center for the past 4 years. And this book is a new way to reach Chinese, not only use the Bible, but start from the Chinese culture and to pave ways and build bridges to lead the Chinese to the Bible truth.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just want to say, there's many ways of sharing our faith, and what Dr. Wong has shared with us today is just one of them. I encourage you to make friends with your neighbors and share your faith. Back to you, Gary.
I invite you now to pause for a few moments. And as you watch this video, as you see the images, as you listen to the words of this song, please remember in prayer those who are serving on the front lines of mission. The song is called Missionaries Need Missionaries Too.
Somewhere on this earth, in the heart of a foreign land, a family with a passion is living their mission plan, bringing God's truth to a hungry, thirsty tribe, knowing well their lives are always on the line. Missionaries need missionaries too. They need the prayers of loved ones. They need love from me and you. And when they just like Christ make the ultimate sacrifice, someday in heaven they'll thank you, 'cause you're a missionary too. Somewhere in jungle skies, use a plane that's saving lives, bringing cures to ease the pain, bringing sight to darkened eyes. They carry on their work through the storms and through the night, never-ending labors to bring souls the light. Missionaries need missionaries too. They need the prayers of loved ones. They need love from me and you. And when they just like Christ make the ultimate sacrifice, someday in heaven they'll thank you, for you're a missionary too. In the streets or a village, their work may go unseen. For the sake of Christ they sacrifice their own needs. Remind them that you love them, give them what you can, 'cause your mission field is very real. Help them carry out God's plan. Missionaries need missionaries too. They need the prayers of loved ones. They need love from me and you. When they just like Christ make the ultimate sacrifice. Missionaries need missionaries too. They need the prayers of loved ones. They need love from me and you. And when they just like Christ make a loving sacrifice, someday in heaven they'll thank you for the things your prayers have brought them through. And your mission is accomplished. Oh, thank you. You're a missionary too. You're a missionary too. You're a missionary too.
Well, that's about it for today's program, and I hope that you've been inspired and challenged by what you've seen on Global Mission Snapshots. Around the world today, from here in Tampa, Florida, to China, to the streets of London, England, the light of God's love is being shared by men and women, boys and girls who have made a commitment to follow the example of Jesus Christ. And I want to thank you for your continuing prayers and your financial support for Global Mission, planting new groups of believers around the world. And before we go, I'd like to offer you a small free gift as a thank you for your continuing participation in mission. And I hope that you'll continue to pray for the frontline mission workers and for the unentered areas and unreached people groups of the world. For Global Mission Snapshots, I'm Gary Krause, and I hope that you can join me next time right here on this program.